Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a PJTN podcast, and I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. If you missed the last episode of this podcast, you will find it and our previous podcast lineup on our website at pjtn.org, as well as all the other platforms that you use to access your favorite podcasts. On this week's podcast, I have invited Gary Krupp with Pave the Way Foundation to Proclaiming Justice to discuss the recent passing of Pope Francis and what his passing means for the future of the Catholic Church and its relationship to Israel and the Jewish people. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today on Proclaiming Justice.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Laurie. It's great to see you and Stan again.
Yeah, well, gosh, it's been a long time. I have fond memories of our time spent in Rome, and we are so grateful for all you did in helping to arrange that meeting with Cardinal Koch. And today, we're going to talk about the Vatican and the recent passing of Pope Francis. This was not really it didn't come as a surprise to many people. We know that he was struggling. His health was challenged, and we knew that he was very sick. But it was just kind of surreal, his last message for Easter and then his parting.
Right.
Passing on.
Yeah, very providential for some. It's quite amazing.
So tell us about Saint Francis or Pope Francis's passing. This has been, he's been an amazing leader to some. Others have been concerned about some of the policies. As we all know, we've been watching the talking heads about Pope Francis. But tell us about your relationship with him. Tell us about your mission at Pave the Way Foundation so that our audience has a background as to who you are and the unique relationship that you did have with Pope Francis.
Right. We actually Pave the Way Foundation was formed 25 years ago, and it was because in the year 2000, St. John Paul II knighted me to a papal knighthood, which we didn't expect, but it was because of work I did for a hospital in Italy, the Hospital of St. Padre Pio. And so I was knighted, and I'm now finding, because at that time I was the seventh Jewish man in history to be knighted by the Pope to this order. And then, so I'm talking to Mary about it, and I said, this is a very unique thing. I'm a member of the papal household, but I'm also Jewish, and I'm a Zionist and very devoted to the state of Israel. How can we bridge this in a very unique way? And we have done that. That's what we've worked on for many, many years. Then again, in 2007, I was raised in rank by Pope Benedict. And then Pope Francis knighted Mary and I to the highest level you can be. And she's the first Jewish woman in the history of the church ever to be knighted to a papal knighthood. And it's quite remarkable. But we look at this as people ask me, what is it like to be a papal knight? I said, well, that $3.50 gets you on a bus. It's not really anything more than a tool in order to do the work that we do. And because of this relationship, especially with the state of Israel and the Jewish people, we've recognized, at least the area we've worked in, two major areas. One is a diplomatic area, and that is that the Holy See and the state of Israel entered into recognize one another in diplomatic relations, but it left three outstanding issues. They call the fundamental agreements open, and have been open for 32 years. And every time they actually negotiate this, the government of Israel changes and they start all over again, and they don't record meetings and so on. And this has been a particular problem because it's caused issues in Israel. For example, the mayor of Haifa seized 3 Catholic bank accounts and said, you owe us taxes. We don't owe you, because the tax agreement was never signed. And so we had to intercede with the prime minister's office to get that killed and to stop it, because what they do is the church has to, they seize these accounts, so the church has to go in and hire a lawyer, go to court, and they always will
Mhm.
they'll always lose the case. The Israelis lose the case. But then the mayor of Jerusalem, near Bakat, did it, the same thing. And we had to do the same thing. And the reason is that these fundamental agreements were never finished. They were never,
Mm.
and that's where what is taxable in Israel and what is not taxable. Religious institutions are not taxable. For-profit entities are taxable. And so
Mhm.
this has been remaining a problem. That's the first problem. The
Mhm.
second problem was an accidental discovery that I made many, many years ago, because as I said, I helped this hospital of St. Padre Pio, and I was sitting in Rome for lunch with my friend from the Congregation of the Cause of the Saints. He's a priest who was very much involved, and I said, I'm very excited that Padre Pio is being canonized. And so he said to
Mm.
me, well, I think Pius XII deserves it more. And I almost fell on the floor because I grew up thinking Hitler's Pope. And he
Mhm.
said,
Right.
and then what he did is he directed me to the Jesuits, to the postulated of the cause, and to the related to the cause, which started me on an adventure, Mary and I, where we have now been involved since 2006, gathering over 76,000 pages of documents proving Pius XII was not only the greatest hero during the Second World War, the
Mhm.
Catholic Church had the greatest humanitarian effort by saving 1 million Jewish lives during the Second World
Mhm.
War, which
Mhm.
is today 25% of the world's Jewish population. So that's two major projects we've worked on. And we've now made major strides in that area. But the problem is there's sort of a cabal out there of the so-called scholars who wrote all these negative books and never researched this subject. They
Mhm.
never properly researched it. It's just simple.
Mhm.
They say, well, we wait for the Vatican archives to open. Well, guess what? Long before the
Mhm.
archives opened, we've gone to different, there have been millions of pages of documents available since the end of World War II that none of these people have ever accessed. We went to
Mhm.
Germany, we went to Austria, we went to in Campania in Italy, in Assisi in Italy. Those archives have been available long before the Pope opened the secret archives, and so we've gathered them. I have and I posted them online. And what the reason this is important is because, as I mentioned, Pope Benedict was a friend of ours. I knew him as a cardinal.
Mhm.
Mary and I met with him 19 times, and he gave me papal permission to publish these documents, which are the property of the Holy See. And
Mhm.
so there's an agreement to access them on our website. Anyone can download these. Go to our website, ptwf.org, and you can download it. It's on the Vatican papers, and you'll see it's incredible. So he gave us
Mhm.
permission for this. And then Pope Francis, he opened up the archives for us, which really what it is further prove what we were pointing out, because literally every chief rabbi in the world, every Jewish organization in the world, the Israelis, everybody adored Pius XII up
Mhm.
until 5 years after he died, when the KGB disinformation project called Operation C-12 destroyed his reputation. Worst
Mhm.
character assassination of the 20th century, and to this very day it stands. And this is a crime in Judaism.
Mhm.
When I discovered this, I went to Yonah Metzger, who at that time was the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel. I said, Rabbi, you got to see what I found. He said, I bless you for this. I want you to do everything you can to find, we actually translated my book into Hebrew for him, which he thanked
Wow.
us for. But it's a big project, and it's one that we're
Mhm.
winning now. We're winning it because the truth is undeniable of what this,
Mhm.
and he actually created the modern state of Israel. 1917, met with Nachum Sokolov, the head of the World Zionist Organization, to build a Jewish homeland in Palestine. He
Mhm.
and Pacelli at the time was was Secretary of State, introduced was the nuncio in Germany,
Right.
introduced to the Secretary of State. Then in 1925, he introduces Nachum Sokolov to Pope Benedict XV. The same
Mhm.
thing, build a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And then in 1948, Pius XII as Pope got all the Catholic countries to vote in favor of the partitioning. This man created the state of Israel, and we
Wow.
hate him. This is a violation of
Right.
Jewish law. Gratitude.
Mm.
This is an example.
Yeah, this is amazing. It's not obviously widely known, but you did write about this. You just mentioned that in your book. And again, people can go to your website to access that book. It's well worth the read. There's a lot of great documentation.
So I put the book online on our website free of charge to download, but it's at 400 pages. You download it as a PDF, and you can read it on your computer. But we're not reprinting it. I have no plans to reprint it now, but that's
Right.
why I'm offering it worldwide free of charge. And it
That's
makes
fantastic.
of this.
Hmm.
And, as the Rabbi Metzger said to me, he says, in Jewish law, the worst character flaw a Jew can have is ingratitude. And
Hmm.
the fact is that this Russian disinformation
Yeah.
project, Operation C-12, robbed the Jewish people of the dignity of showing gratitude to the man that saved 25% of the world's Jewish population. This is a
Hmm.
sin of Judaism, and that's my driving force.
Right. Absolutely. Well, very good. Well, on that note, that there's a lot of great history that Gary has captured, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to encourage you to go to his website and read more about this because this is not widely known. And so, Gary, I commend you for doing all of this amazing research. But let's talk about the Pope Francis's passing. We know in recent months the Pope has not been as favorable in his comments to Israel. He's accused Israel of genocide in Gaza, and so we want to try to clarify this information and these accusations against Israel. And so were you in talks with Pope Francis? And by the way, the fact that you and Mary were knighted by Pope Francis and by previous popes for the amazing work that you're doing says a lot about the Catholic Church and its recognition of the Jewish people and the fact that they were working with you. So anyhow, tell us um, about Pope Francis's relationship with Israel, especially following October 7th and some of the comments that Pope Francis had made.
Understand that I have to give you some background information, and I encourage everybody to purchase the book of Cynthia Farahat, Farahat. It's about the Muslim Brotherhood, the apparatus of death. In this book, and she's probably one of the world's authority on the Muslim Brotherhood.
Mhm.
Operation October 7th attack was planned 2 years in advance in Turkey, Iran, Qatar, and New York City and Palestine. 2 years in advance, and it
Mm.
was 100% successful. What it happened. It was exactly what they wanted to happen, and that was to demonize and isolate the state of Israel worldwide,
Mhm.
create international anti-Semitism, which is exactly what it did. And the best example of that is, anybody with a quarter of a piece of brain can watch all of the protests in all the universities. And guess what? How is it that every single around the world, every one of them had the kafia, the Palestinian scarves, and the Palestinian flags? You know how? Because they were shipped months in advance of the attack. So everything happened exactly according to what they wanted to happen. And the Vatican stepped right into the same pile of doo doo that everybody else did about
Mm.
genocide and the killing, because as we well know, the Palestinians have no problem killing their own people.
That's right.
And it's they're martyrs and everything. These kids are brought up with the idea of martyrdom. And
Mhm.
so killing a bunch of them, and showing dead bodies, this is great. And the fact is, the problem is you had no legitimate, uh, and to this very day, we have no legitimate agency that can verify the actual number of people that died, how many
Right.
were fighters, how many were Hamas, and so on. So it's just a typical example of disinformation, misinformation, and how the media can destroy the world. And ultimately,
Mhm.
they may well do that one
Yeah.
day because of the way that they report. The Vatican did the same thing. They did
Mhm.
the same thing. I was in Rome about 4 weeks ago, and I had meetings with the Cardinal Secretary of State and the foreign minister of the Vatican State. And I brought Rabbi Shmuley Boteach with me, and
Mhm.
about 20 of our donors and supplies. And the rabbi made a statement to both the cardinal and to the foreign minister that the Vatican should make that the Pope should make a statement that the Jews of Israel are not occupiers. According
Mhm.
to the Old Testament, according to the New Testament, and according to the Quran, this is the
Mhm.
land of the Jewish people.
Right.
So a simple statement like that would go, because all they do is this is what they use. They say, oh, you're occupiers and you're throwing this
Mhm.
is an issue. This is a problem. So they step right into it as well, and they still suffer from that. And even though Pope Francis grew up in Argentina, his very close friend was Rabbi Abraham Skorka.
Mm.
He's an Orthodox rabbi down in Argentina, and I had dinner with him. the dinner subject we had was Pius XII, and he said the same thing. Pius was silent, which is nonsense. I mean, we could prove everything we're saying, but it's the same thing. This was a problem when you're kowtowing to a group out of fear, and that's the problem. And I can assure you, and if you want, Laurie, I'm going to send you something, and you can distribute it as you wish. But this is the manifesto of the Muslim Brotherhood and how they're going to destroy North America. This is from 1991, and this document was sent to me by, I was able to get it through Cynthia because it was confiscated by the FBI in a raid. 1991, and it's in Arabic, and then it's in English after that. But it describes every one of these free Palestine organizations in all the universities, and it's an incredible plan. And we're falling into it. And guess what? There's no Europe left. England is no longer left. France is no longer. Sweden, all of these countries have been because of. And I told the Vatican this, and I said the problem lies very, very simply in your definition of migrants. A migrant is a poor, downtrodden person who's been persecuted and being killed, or an invading force. That's the key. And that's the problem. And you want to know the most incredible thing? Cynthia, she's Egyptian, Christian Orthodox. Cynthia's telling me my strongest supporters, not just financial, but are Muslims, because the Muslim people do not want to see these actions of these extremists.
Right. And
so this is a very important issue. And the problem is, this is what sways world opinion. It's exactly what happened. It's happening in every stupid university, Harvard University, universities. It's outrageous, outrageous.
Yeah, and it's true what you're saying. This document actually that was found during and it was displayed during the Holy Land Foundation trial in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, that laid out the agenda to take over the world. You know, our enemy has been very clear. They're here to take out the great Satan and the little Satan, the pigs and the apes. And of course, that's us. That's the United States, and it's Israel.
Yeah, exactly. So how does this stop it? I don't see it stopping. I think England, for example, is irreversible. They have what's called grooming squads. Grooming squads. You know what they are? This group that identify as Pakistani men that are going around raping young white women in England. And the police do nothing about it. And when J.D. Vance went and addressed the European Union, what did he say? He says, if somebody posts something online about this, you arrest them. Right. And now if you go, the majority of many of these major cities have Muslims as mayors so on. And the fact is, it's not, you can't confuse, you can't call all Muslims bad. They aren't. But they're just as frightened as the regular folks, Jews and Christians. And by the way, part of our work, Pave the Way Foundation, works between the religions. As you know, we've worked with a Muslim cleric who's discovered what are called the covenants of protection. Covenants were protection when Muhammad died in 632. In 628, he issued covenants of protection, ordering his followers until the end of days to protect the Christians in their churches and to protect the Jews and their synagogues. Why? They're not infidels. They believe in one God, and we have to protect them. And it says, if you do not do this, I will be there on Judgment Day to judge you. This is a fatwa from the Prophet Muhammad. And guess what? Nobody wants to hear it. ISIS. There was an article in Huffington Post years ago. It says ISIS is declaring war on the covenants. It's outrageous. Wow. This is a typical example of how religion has been abused and used for an agenda which is not a godly agenda.
So, yeah, absolutely. So you're saying with Pope Francis and with the Vatican in itself, it got sucked into the propaganda war, believed the lies. Yeah. And after, let's talk about Nostra Aetate, because, Nostra Aetate has been part of the Catholic Church since 1965. Would you mind just giving our audience an overview of Nostra Aetate? Because it was revolutionary for the Catholic Church, especially in its relationship with Israel and with the Jewish people specifically.
Yes, it was an incredible document, which was formed during the Second Ecumenical Council. And coincidentally, it also plays into what we were doing with Pius XII, believe it or not, because when the Soviets learned of this this incredible change, which is the Catholic Church's position on other religions, including Islam and Judaism and so on. That's when they launched Operation C-12 to destroy Pius XII.
Mm-hmm.
Same time. So during that point, but it was incredibly important thing because it recognized
Mm-hmm.
the Jews were not responsible for the death of
Right.
Jesus, and so
Mm-hmm.
on and so forth. And it's time for this thing, the relationship to be improved, which is it has taken that steps. But
Mm-hmm.
here you see this plan, which is a brilliant plan, by the way. October 7th, brilliant, 100%
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
It with the amount of damage this did, how
Mm-hmm.
much damage this did in this relationship.
Right, right. So what's so important about Nostra Aetate here, it was um, enacted in 1965, and it was under Pope John Paul II. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was also the first pope to actually go to Auschwitz and to offer up prayers. He was an amazing, amazing leader. But
Yes,
it seems like we kind of got away from that. And some of the foundational things, as you said, was you can't, with Nostra Aetate, you can no longer, Christians, Catholics can no longer accuse the Jews of deicide, of killing Christ. That Christians, it stated that Christians were spiritually tied to the descendants of Abraham and the Jews. Christianity came out of Judaism, recognizing that this was historic. I mean, the Christian church recognized the Old Testament, the Tanakh, as truth, and that God is still in covenant with Israel, with the
and the Jews,
Jews. And of course, the church is grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel. This was huge because even the Protestant church had not done something. The Catholic Church is a little bit different structure before or uh, than the Protestant churches are, because they're different denominations. And so, but the Catholic Church is what, 1.2 billion
correct?
followers around the globe,
Yes,
and this set a precedent. But it seems like, Gary, since Nostra Aetate was enacted, it seems like the Catholic Church has not done a lot. And Sister Rose Thering
right.
brought this up, that the Catholic Church hasn't done enough publicly to call out the Christian anti-Semitism, continuing to, perpetuate the accusation of deicide. Um, where was Pope Francis on this? Because it almost seemed like, he wasn't even cognizant of Nostra Aetate and the relationship that he had with Israel, with the Jews, seemed to be quite strained. And it almost felt like he would have been against the values adopted through Nostra Aetate.
I wouldn't put it that as harshly as that. I would not say that he was against it. I think that he was sort of swayed by other influences. I think in that regard, he, as I said, his closest friend was a Orthodox rabbi in Buenos Aires, Abraham Skorka, and he wrote a book with him. They wrote a book together. So he was. I can't say that he would. They were that way. The problem is that as we see politically, and we see it every single day. The best. My father fought with General Patton and liberated Buchenwald and Utrecht concentration camps. He was
Mm,
wounded in the Battle
yeah.
of Bulge as well. And the fact is that he had taken pictures, and I grew up with his pictures.
Hmm.
And it was a terrible thing. But look, it's what's happening. There are people
Hmm.
today that will not recognize that the Holocaust ever happened.
Right.
This same exact thing that
Hmm.
that are allowing benevolent or true history to be pushed aside by the BS who that
Hmm.
people are putting out,
Right.
and the media is putting out. The legacy media, the worst in the world, in
Hmm.
in in
Right.
in, uh, in expressing information about this. So I don't believe. And one thing I say to people: don't believe anything you read. Do your own research. Do
Right.
deep research. And that's the
Hmm.
same thing happened with me with Pius XII. We hated him, and well, everybody's until such time as Mary and I decided to make this a project to Pave the Way Foundation,
Hmm.
and we traveled all over the world and discovered the most incredible life-saving efforts that this man did to
Hmm.
save Jewish people because his best friend growing up was Jewish, Guido
Right.
Mendel. So I mean, the guy's influence. He learned to speak Hebrew. He read the books of the great rabbis, and
Hmm.
he actually got Guido Mendes in 1938 during the anti-Semitic laws in Italy. He got him he sent him to Palestine. So, which
Hmm.
is, I mean, this
Right.
is the sort of guy he was, and so my biggest sin is I cannot believe that Jews today hate him. It's unbelievable.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
and the point is, and it's the same thing here. While we were doing the research for Pius XII, 1917, Michael Hesseman is our German director, the most incredible archivist in the world. We find 2,300 pages of documents on the Armenian genocide
Mm.
in the Vatican archives where they tried to stop it. And guess what? It
Oh.
was Pius XII was contacted by the Swiss Jewish community to make sure that the Ottoman Turks they were going to kill the Jews next. First, the Armenians, who were aligned with Russia,
Hmm.
were aligned with England. They were getting it. So he got the German government to guarantee the safety of the Jews of Palestine.
Mm.
Who knows this stuff? This is
Wow.
its own, and I have the documents, the original documents from the German government. We will protect the Jews even if we need to use arms, because Pacelli was the nuncio to Germany, and he got that done. So here's history that
Hmm.
prove that people don't even want to look at. In fact, Michael wrote a book, The Vatican and the Armenian Genocide, presented it to Pope Francis. Pope Francis then made a speech talking about the Armenian genocide, and
Hmm.
Erdogan from Turkey said, "Watch what you're saying, Mr. Pope." That's what he says. And then
Oh.
the Pope responds back. He says, "I'll open my archives if you open yours."
Mm. Wow.
So the
Wow.
problem is, what's happening is true history and evidence that we accept today. We know the Holocaust, but it's dwindling, it's
Mhm.
disappearing, and now
Right.
you have generations of people. Well, it never really happened. And
Right.
and remember what Eisenhower said when he was going through the camps. He brought all the people from the villages up there. I want to videotape everything you see, because some son of a bitch in 70 years is going to say this never happened.
And here
And
we
he
are. That was so prophetic when he
so
made that statement. Yeah.
yeah,
So, Pope, with Pope Francis's passing, we're looking now to what is the Catholic Church going to do about who they're going to appoint to be the next pope. And
right,
there's been lots of speculation out there. I've been listening to all the talking heads, and they say, "Oh, we're not going to know until we get there." And then some people say, "Oh, but they have a tendency that when they pick a pope who leans so far to the left, because as Francis did, he was a lefty. He didn't share a lot of conservative. There were a lot of conservatives, especially Catholics.
right,
I know here in the United States who would
right,
publicly say he's not my pope. He doesn't look like a Catholic. He doesn't act like a Catholic.
right, right.
Um, so where are we, in this process? What are the chances that we're going to get a pope that reflects more of the values, the trend that is really happening globally, set off
Right,
by President Trump? I know Francis wasn't a fan
right.
of the president, but what are the chances of us getting a pope, or them appointing a pope that's going to reflect the trend to go back to a more conservative position, both biblically and politically?
Yeah. I would say the probability is that will happen, that the next pope, and that typically happens with this. But understand that they sort of stack the deck, and when they appoint cardinals and so on. But let
Hmm.
me. There is a reality that's existing. Every one of the cardinals who will be in that conclave see what's actually happening in Europe, and
Hmm.
whether or not they may publicly say one thing about migration stuff. The policies that were carried out and the constant criticism of countries that were not allowing migrants to come in is
Hmm.
all of a sudden that's showing its ugly head of what the reality
Yes.
is. And
Hmm.
so my guess is, and I'll tell you, it's a joke in Rome. They call the preferiti. These are the people who they say, well, these are the most likely people to be elected pope. And I said the preferiti go into the conclave for the election, and they come out as cardinals. So typically, people are right out of left base. I mean, nobody expected Francis to be elected, right?
Mm.
Or John Paul II as a Polish pope, and
Interesting.
non-Italian. But the point is, um, I always say when the white smoke comes, and my friend actually is the Camerlengo, Cardinal Kevin Farrell. He's a
Hmm.
wonderful guy. He's actually American. He's actually American of Irish descent. And Mary and I met with him, actually, you met his brother, Bishop Brian Farrell.
Right.
That's his brother. Anyway,
Okay.
when Kevin Farrell comes out, he's now running the Vatican, and he'll come
Oh,
out.
interesting.
and he'll come out and he's going to say Habemus Papam. We have a pope in Latin, and they'll learn that. That's the only time we're going to know who it is. And the funny thing is, we had been very close with Pope Benedict when he was a cardinal, Mary and I. And when two of us found out he was elected pope, we went, it was absolutely shocked, it was wonderful. But I would say the only thing I can say more or less for sure that the church is going to go towards the right a little bit more, whoever they pick.
Mm-hmm.
Because typically that's what happens, right, left, because again, these are brilliant men. I mean, these people, and they're smart enough to see what's really going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not working out quite the way you expect it to.
Mm-hmm.
According to the globalists, let's let everybody in, have no borders.
Right.
What? That's the complete destruction of your country and your culture and your language.
Right.
In fact, just there's a point. Cynthia Farrahat is brilliant. She studies the Muslim Brotherhood every day. She's on these chat rooms and so on. And she said that she went to England, and there's a young boy, a little boy, he's a teenager now,
Mm-hmm.
who was brought up in London, cannot speak English at all.
Wow.
And the popular name in England now is Muhammad.
Muhammad,
So, I mean, so this is bizarre. And the fact is that I think that anyone with any kind of a half a brain is going to understand that, look, you want, and by the way, if you think that Notre Dame Cathedral burned by accident, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So
happening all over France and Germany.
Right.
Yeah, a complete destruction of these cultures and languages.
Right. Well, look at what's happening even in Africa. And there has been some talk. Some people are of the opinion that there could possibly, if there was ever a chance for an African pope to be named, this would be the time because of all the persecution by Muslims that are slaughtering the Christians throughout Africa.
Yeah, and the church is growing faster in Africa than any place.
Yeah.
In population. Yeah, absolutely. So this always is a possibility. Nobody knows what's going to happen except when the white smoke comes out, and they'll tell you what's going to happen. But right now, that's where it is. It's a rough time historically that we're facing, and the fact is that these European countries are now starting to learn, but it's getting to the point of being too late. I don't know how you can expel these people. And by the way, they're having 6 kids for every 1 kid born in England.
Right.
I mean, and that's the same thing in Israel, where that's why you see the Orthodox having 10 kids and 9 kids and so on. The population change, and everything will happen as it should happen. We're in God's hands, so we'll see.
Amen. Yeah. Well, as we close up and wrap up this interview, I want to thank you for just updating us on what is going on and what we can expect. How soon do you expect that we're going to start seeing some movement with the conclave meeting?
Well, they have a period of mourning, which we're in right now, and then they're going to have the funeral. But by the way, the funeral is, for some strange reason, can be on a Saturday, so no Jewish rabbis can attend it. That's going to be on a Saturday, and then after that, they'll form a conclave and go into session. Who knows how long that'll be? I mean, Pius XII was chosen after the first ballot, but then again, he was elected a month before World War II started. And he had to all of that to be confronted with.
Right.
There's so much history here that, and typically with that. With all the advancement of the social media and everything else, we're supposed to be smarter, but we're not. We're really not.
Well, we do have our challenges ahead. And of course, the appointment of the next pope is going to have a huge impact globally. And Gary, I thank you so much for all that you do within your organization. Again, any last comments that you want to make to our audience?
Yes, and to show you the evil of the legacy media, and I am telling you the evil. For example, the only country, and I was going to point this out, none of the Christian countries stand and save Christians who are being murdered. Israel is the only country that does. Yeah. And how do I know that? Because if anyone can look up Operation Good Neighbor. Operation Good Neighbor was the Israeli government opened up its borders for Syrian Christians, brought them into Israel, and they came to pave the way to supply them with baby formula and diabetes medication for the people they were saving. Wow. And we did it. We did it. And you can go to our website. You'll see that the military, the army trucks with says Pave the Way Foundation, and these kept cartons of baby formula with in Arabic how to mix the baby formula. And so, but Israel does that. They did it when Muslims were coming into Greece. The Muslim were coming. They had Israeli kids who spoke Arabic were greeting them, giving them blankets. The media will not tell you. So that's why you have morons from the United Nations with the same crap that's gone on for 70 years, with the stupid condemnations. It's unbelievable. It shows you how stupid we are as people. And, ultimately, I used to say that, that people say, I said, I can never understand why people say I'm praying to God for world peace. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's the last thing I pray to God for. The last time had to pray for, God made world peace, we had to know how to build an ark. So I don't want world peace.
I understand. So, I know that the average Catholic, the average Christian really doesn't have a say in what happens, what is decided. But can we as Christians make public statements letting the leaders who are going to be part of the conclave know that we want someone who reflects the values of the Western Judeo-Christian tradition that we are, every Western country is part of.
Yeah.
Whether it's, the African countries, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Great Britain.
The answer to your question is no. I don't care how many times you write to every cardinal you want. They know what they're going to do. And the fact is, the media is not going to tell you anyway. They probably won't broadcast it. You could, you know how to do it? Pray. That's how to do it.
Absolutely.
You're working from a higher authority then. But if you're depending on the legacy media, forget it. Nothing's going to happen.
That's right. That's right.
So I would say prayers will be the most effective.
Absolutely. Gary, thank you again so much for your time, for breaking this down for us. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. I'm sure we will talk again once the conclave convenes and they start the process, and we'll be watching closely in the interim. And of course, we will be joining with all of you in prayer.
Yes, so that's the best way to do this. As a matter of fact, Mary and I can tell you that we have our favorite for the papal, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. I can't tell you who it is. I don't want to jinx them.
Oh, come on.
Sorry, will not do it.
Okay, well, you'll tell me who it was afterwards.
After the election, I will. Yeah.
All right, super. Well, God bless you both. Mary, regards to you, and Gary, it's always good to see you. You and I need to have a conversation. We need to talk about the curriculum and textbook. We need to follow the tradition of Rose Thering. We got to get rid of the anti-Semitic content in the textbooks.
Also, I'm going to send you the manifesto of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's quite long. As I said, the first section is in Arabic, second section is in English, and lays out this plan, which October 7th that's an absolute example of it. Right. It's very strategic planning, and it's working. Without question, it's working. I'm also telling everybody can download my book free of charge on the Pius XII page. You'll go down, you'll see my book on it. So, because we're not printing it anymore, I just don't want to deal with these issues of shipping it and all that stuff. So, it's available for anybody who'd like to see it, and it lays out everything. All the people who are, of all the things that have occurred from the very early stage of when he was first elected, made the nuncio in Germany, all the way up until his death. And then the critical books that were written about him, we go after every one of them because they're all provably wrong. Can I give you a quick example?
Yeah, absolutely.
Two books that were just written. David Kurtzer wrote two. Now, I said that everybody was born before the war or lived through the war and experienced what happened. They all loved Pius XII. Everyone born after the war wrote all these hit jobs on the church and on Pius XII. Every one of them. And it's the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. How is that possible? So we found that David Kurtzer, his first book against Pius XII, won a Pulitzer Prize. The second book just came out, and everybody's reviewing it. New York Times, they're all talking about it. But guess what? If you'd like, I'll send you an article of his father, Rabbi Kurtzer, was interviewed in 1944, saying how the Pope and the Catholic Church have saved the Jews, fed the Jews, and is, in my mind, a bright star in Christianity. It's unbelievable. It's the most, and I have the article. I have the actual article, June 1944. It was an Iowa newspaper that interviewed him. And he said, Christianity, they were incredible. The Pope fed the Jews and everything. And his son, who's the maven, who's the expert, nothing. And by the way,
Wow.
not one of these people have ever really researched the
Mm.
subject because they only go to the secret archives. There have been millions of pages available since the end of
Mhm.
World War II. Every convent, every diocese, every ecclesiastical facility, no one has ever bothered to look.
Mm.
We did.
Mm.
And that's why we have so many pages.
Well, and that's why you're on this program today, because you've got this information. That's
This is an
right.
issue very, very bothersome to me personally, and it's just something I'm very devoted to. Right now,
Well,
I may be meeting with Bill O'Reilly at my friend's church, and I want him to do his next book, The Killing of Pius XII.
oh my gosh,
And I
that
would
would be
give him
fantastic.
I didn't have to mention my name. I would give him
Perfect.
access to everything, all the interviews we did.
Mhm.
And it's just a real thorn on my side how the media can do something like this.
Wow.
It's just,
Leave it
you
to
know,
Bill O'Reilly. He'd be a great author to take
I'm
that
really hoping.
message.
He's actually a friend of a priest friend of mine, and we're going to see him in the beginning of May. So we'll see what happens. Wish me luck.
Absolutely. Give him my regards.
Okay, good. Take care, Laurie. Thank you.
God bless you, Gary. I'll be back in touch.
Great. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this program informative. We will post this podcast on our website and all of our podcast platforms so that you can share with your family and friends. As PJTN Watchmen, we have a biblical mandate to stand against the ungodly rising Nazi threat that is destroying this nation and other Western nations, threatening our Judeo-Christian values and promoting anti-Semitism. We cannot remain silent, ladies and gentlemen. God warned the prophet Ezekiel about the responsibility of the watchman. As a watchman, you can sound the alarm and warn others by simply sharing this podcast with your family and friends. So please share and like this podcast to help sound the alarm in your community. Dietrich Bonhoeffer reminded us that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Don't forget to join us for next week's podcast as we continue combating the rise of anti-Semitism and taking back local control of our communities and our children's education. I want to also remind you that if you have not signed up to become a PJTN Watchman, you can help support this mission through our award-winning documentaries and Focus on Israel programs, as well as more programs like this for just $20 a month. So go to our website at pjtn.org to watch our programs and listen to our past podcasts. With your generous monthly donation, you can ensure that PJTN remains on the front lines and in the headlines, but we can't do it without your faithful prayers and financial support. I hope that you will prayerfully consider supporting our mission as we educate to activate Jews, Christians, and all people of conscience to stand on the front lines of this all-encompassing war. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the State of Israel, and these United States. Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.